And it's time now for weather with Nebraska Extension Ag climatologist and Market Journal chief meteorologist Al Dutcher. And Al, we've had everything but the kitchen sink thrown at us so far this month as far as winter goes. Are we going to see any sort of warming trend anytime in the near future?
Yes, Bill, we had quite the week. A lot of cold air coming in earlier in the week, held in place for the majority of the week, and we started to see a gradual warm up as we got toward the end of the week. We had a couple systems recently that moved through the state, nothing but a little bit of light precipitation. We got one more system that'll work through over the next 24 to 36 hours, and then it looks like we're going to get into a very substantial warming trend, at least for several days, before we deal with another upper air trough moving into the western United States with the potential to fire off some convection across the central and southern plains. So as we look at the upper air model, first thing I'll draw your attention to is that we do have a little piece of energy that was moved through yesterday, basically off to our north now, basically trying to get the ridge built in, so a little bit warmer temperatures, but we're going to have another piece of energy that's going to slide through over the next 24 hours to keep us pretty much stable. But we have low pressure at the surface to the northwest of us, most of the heavy precipitation to the southeast of us. But as we get into tomorrow, we're going to see this trough deepen in the western United States. And it's going to shoot some energy out over top of the ridge, and that will lead to some potential precipitation across the northern plains as we have low pressure at the surface developing northeastern Wyoming. That'll generate most of the moisture to the north of us, might touch northeastern Nebraska. But then as we get into Monday, really warm air starts to develop as we get a southwest flow aloft and start to pump up moisture from the Gulf. We're going to be well spread into the 70s and potentially even the 80s as we get into Monday and Tuesday. Precipitation starts to break out into the central Rockies. The trough does move from the GFS standpoint and deep right through Texas. This is a little bit deeper than it has been the last couple of days. I expect it to not be nearly as deep. Bottom line is a low pressure will start to try to develop over the Texas panhandle, and that will bring that Gulf moisture up and fire off some thunderstorms. Now this has been shifted down a little bit farther to the south, maybe a little bit farther north, but basically precipitation in stores. That trough begins to move on Wednesday toward the east of Texas. That'll bring some wraparound moisture also into the central plains. So we do have some decent shot of moisture, particularly across the eastern half of the state. If this system's a little bit farther to the north, and we'll see more widespread precipitation across western Nebraska. By the time we get to Thursday, that trough moves over to the Ohio River Valley. We start to get some slight ridging. Low pressure tries to develop at the surface over the north central portions of Nebraska, but there's just no moisture as most of it is funneling up into the eastern Corn Belt. Notice the precipitation returns in the Pacific Northwest. That's our next system that starts to dive down into the central Rockies as we go into the end of the month into early portions of May. We start to see low pressure developing over southeastern Wyoming. That does bring some moisture convergence over the northern Rockies, and as we go through the weekend, this system is expected to develop some pretty significant weather across the central and southern plains. How uniform it is remains to be seen, but be aware another opportunity for precipitation goes as we get into next weekend. And as we look farther out, we do see that does take into consideration that low pressure system moving into a region with basically normal temperatures. And in terms of precipitation, normal precipitation with the heaviest to the southeast. This might be shifted up back toward the northwest if that system comes out in one singular piece and a little bit farther to the north. So Bill, overall, it looks like some warm pattern and some planting weather ahead.